I'm sure you've noticed how certain fighting styles and personalities seem to manifest themselves regularly, as if there are certain things that are universal about the fight game. Fighters from every corner of the world, from completely different socio-economic and martial arts backgrounds, step into their roles as if they were born for them. In this video, I'm going to introduce a concept I'm calling the Archetypes of Fighting. I'll also explain the 8 fighter archetypes and talk about some of the notable fighters from each category. It's possible for fighters to embody multiple archetypes, and I'll expand on that in the next video. But for now, I tried to pick one archetype for each fighter that I felt best illustrated the concepts being introduced. I don't want to spend too long on the introduction, but it's important to quickly explain what an archetype is and what it means specifically in the context of fighting. If you already understand the concept of archetypes, I'll be putting timestamps below the video so you can jump straight into the main content. Let's get into it. The 8 fighter archetypes presented in this video are based on the work of Carl Jung. Jung described archetypes as images or themes that derive from the collective unconscious and have universal meanings across cultures. He likened archetypes to instinctual patterns of behavior, meaning that intrinsically, we already understand what archetypes are without needing formal definitions, and these archetypes continually express themselves in our stories, art, and dreams. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato also described these concepts with what he called the idea, which he defined as a primordial disposition that preforms and influences thoughts. So in the context of fighting, an archetype is the manifestation of all the conscious and unconscious forces that guide a fighter. These forces include their training, their personality and temperament, their purpose, their values, and literally any other subconscious motivation you can think of. So in a sense, we can think of a fighter's archetypes like their fighting style, but deeper, because it encompasses not only how a person fights, but why. That's what makes fighting so compelling. When we watch a fight, it's not just 2 athletes playing an arbitrary game. We're watching 2 storylines converge and collide, and the archetypes expressing themselves within those stories reflect the archetypes we encounter in our own stories. And with that, allow me to introduce the 8 fighter archetypes, along with some of the fighters who personify them. The first archetype is the Trickster. The Trickster openly questions and mocks the rules and conventions that others take for granted. Defined by their duality, the Trickster is both light and dark, as charming and lovable as they are villainous and deceitful, often friendly with opponents one moment and contemptuous and spiteful the next. The same nonchalant recklessness that allows for their brilliance can also be their downfall. Examples of fighters who personify the Trickster archetype are Sanchai, perhaps the most notorious Muay Thai fighter of all time, Lerdsilla, aptly nicknamed the eel on a skateboard, or in mixed martial arts, we have examples like Dominic Cruz, Sean O'Malley, Bobby Green, and Michael Venom Page. My friend Jesse Stern is another Trickster-style fighter in MMA. And then in boxing, we have fighters like Pernell Whitaker, the Drunken Master Emmanuel Augustus, Tyson Fury, and Prince Nassim Hamed. The Trickster fights with an air of superiority, casting aside the fundamentals in favor of crowd-pleasing theatrics. There can sometimes be a sense that they care more about spectacle than they do about winning. They want you to underestimate them. They want you to have an emotional reaction to their antics. But it's a smokescreen. Behind the pageantry is a cold, calculating precision. The Trickster's arsenal is filled with, well, tricks, both physical and mental, both benign and malicious. The next archetype is the Brawler. The Brawler is characterized by their willingness to take damage in order to close the distance and inflict damage of their own. A person who enjoys combat just for the sake of combat is going to find themselves drawn to the Brawler archetype. Rod Tang is an obvious example that comes to mind when thinking of high-level brawlers. Raymond Deckers, with his relentless attacking style, is another. Notable MMA brawlers include Justin Gaethje, who famously went leg kick for leg kick with Edson Barbosa after telling him they would find out who had the harder shins, Michael Chandler and Eddie Alvarez, who had 2 historic battles in Bellator that they ended up splitting one apiece, Marvin Vettori, the Diaz brothers, Chris Lieben, and the list goes on. Boxers who embody this archetype include Roberto "Hands of Stone" Duran and the legendary Joe Frazier. Brawlers are often known for their durability, walking through your best shots, demoralizing you, and draining your endurance until you break from exhaustion or from capitulation to the pain they've delivered. There's also a subset of brawlers who know they just need to touch you once to end your night, so they're willing to take as many shots as they need to get there. While this archetype is easy to think of as being less skillful than some of the others on this list, there is a nuance to this style of fighting possessed by elite brawlers such as Roberto Duran that make it extremely effective. Infighting, when mastered, is just as much a science and art as any other fighting style. Moving on to the technician. Technicians are driven to break down, analyze, and solve problems in a methodical and practical way. They tend to be precise, efficient, and systematic. The technician's primary goal is to win, and they excel at it, but their meticulously structured approach to fighting can often be seen as too boring or safe for casual fans. Notable technicians include Giorgio the Doctor Petrosian, Israel Adesanya in both kickboxing and MMA, Alexander Volkanovski, George St. Pierre, Kamaru Usman, and Islam Makhachev, as well as Andre Ward and Floyd Mayweather in boxing. Technicians will study the strengths and weaknesses of both their opponents and themselves to plan their approach accordingly. A true technician will also make it a point to understand the techniques, tendencies, and strategies being employed by all competitors within their chosen field of combat. In other words, the technician seeks to master the metagame within their field. This calculated approach to fighting makes the technician a formidable opponent, but if they start to feel like they've completely solved the puzzle, they're liable to stagnate or get caught off guard, as the fight game is constantly evolving. Next up, we have the artist. Artists are creative, unconventional, and single-minded. Where the technician seeks to understand and master current conventions, the artist looks past them, focusing solely on perfecting their art and sharing it with the world. It's the artist's creativity and vision that breaks through established paradigms and makes us question the things we thought we understood. In the context of fighting, the artist often represents a martial art which the masses have deemed ineffective in a quote-unquote real fight. Examples include Lyoto Machida and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson with their karate styles once considered useless in MMA, or Yair Rodriguez with his flashy taekwondo style, or the artist may represent stereotype breakers like Danny Bill, the Cameroonian Muay Thai fighter, whose artful and elegant technique was more beautiful than that of even the Thais themselves. Or Vasily Lomachenko, the brilliant boxer whose father put him in dance classes as a child and who now dances circles around his opponents. If you feel the artist archetype calling to you, you must ignore the critics and naysayers. Trust in yourself and believe in your vision. The next archetype on the list is the bully. Antagonistic and relentless, the bully seems to take pleasure in inflicting mental and physical pain on others. There is a callous cruelty to their fighting style, and most bullies are completely devoid of empathy toward their opposition. The bully will apply pressure until they expose your weaknesses, and then they'll exploit those weaknesses mercilessly. There's a constant psychological element to the bully that's just as ruthless as the physical element. In the case of Nong O, as you can see on the screen right now, he doesn't even need to speak the same language as you to attack you verbally. His body language speaks volumes. Other examples include John Jones, Petr Yan, Colby Covington, Chael Sonnen, Conor McGregor, and Mike Tyson. The bully will cheat and use every underhanded tactic at their disposal to throw you off your game. And a skillful bully is perhaps the most terrifying archetype on this list. It's easy to root against the bully, but there's a part of our shadow side that embraces them as well. We all have a little bit of the bully within us, whether we admit it or not. But the real bullies, the ones who truly manifest this archetype, add a layer of emotion and intrigue that is essential to the story. Without the villain, there is no hero, and the bully who completes their redemption arc can become one of the most loved characters in the end. Standing opposite the bully is the warrior. Embodying toughness and courage, warriors are renowned for setting and achieving goals, overcoming obstacles, and persevering through struggle. The warrior represents the blue-collar everyman, and what they may lack in technical polish and refinement, they more than make up for in grit and determination. The heart of the warrior is second to none, but they do have a tendency to view situations in black and white terms. Examples of the warrior archetype include John Wayne Parr, Daniel Cormier, Robert Whittaker, Dustin Poirier, Frankie Edgar, and Stipe Miocic. And when warriors battle their way to the top of the boxing world, they become legends. Examples include Julio Cesar Chavez and Rocky Marciano. The warrior can sometimes have a strained relationship with fighting, but the call they feel to represent their people and provide for their families keeps them coming back to the arena. When the warrior meets the bully head-to-head in combat, like when Dustin Poirier took on Conor McGregor, or when Daniel Cormier clashed with John Jones, it makes for one of the most compelling storylines in all of fighting. The seventh archetype is the Crusader. The Crusader, similar to the warrior, is brave, resilient, and purpose-driven. However, the Crusader's purpose is derived from the calling of a higher power. This calling is usually either born from religious roots or from their struggle to overcome political oppression, or both. Fighting is the Crusaders' pulpit to spread their gospel, and the more successful they are, the larger the audience they can captivate. Khabib Nurmagomedov is an example of a Crusader. Khabib stood in front of a jeering, hostile crowd of Irish and American fans and defiantly exclaimed, "Alhamdulillah, God give me everything. I know you guys don't like this. Alhamdulillah, tomorrow night I'm gonna smash your boy." And then he did. Other Crusaders include Yoel, the Soldier of God Romero, Benson Henderson, and Benil Dariush, who proudly proclaimed his solidarity with the oppressed people of Iran, and then told the predominantly Muslim crowd in Dubai that they would find true freedom in Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And last, but certainly not least, the most legendary Crusader of all time, Muhammad Ali. He was born Cassius Clay, but denounced it as his slave name and adopted the moniker he's most famously known for. Ali walked away from his prime for 3 years to protest the Vietnam War. His purpose and principles were unquestionable. The Crusader often starts their career with a different primary archetype, but becomes a Crusader when they begin to feel the calling of a higher power. This calling gives the Crusader an extra worldly toughness. It doesn't matter whether or not you believe or agree with the messages they're spreading. They believe, and that gives them power. The final fighter archetype on this list is the monk. The monk's primary focus is the development of their individual character. In this way, fighting becomes a spiritual endeavor, and the monk uses training, preparation, and combat as tools for personal growth. While the monk can often excel in competition, the accolades that come with the sport aspect of fighting will always be secondary to the development of their spirit. Like the Crusader, the monk often starts their career as a different archetype, but becomes a monk via a spiritual awakening. Examples of the monk include Bruce Lee, Alex Caceres, aka Bruce Leroy, Yuri Prohaska, Hickson Gracie, Evan Tanner, Diego Sanchez, who has always been considered a bit of a meme, but was actually a force to be reckoned with in his prime. And perhaps the biggest what if in MMA history, Zabit. I personally have a soft spot for the monk archetype, as it's the one I most closely associated with when I was actively fighting. I quit my job at age 24 and bought a one-way ticket to Thailand, only to eventually realize that the true path of the monk is the journey inward. If you've made it this far, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you are an aspiring fighter yourself, you must understand the archetypes you embody if you want to express yourself to your full potential. Socrates told us, know thyself. Fighters can also begin their careers as one archetype and evolve into new archetypes as the circumstances of their lives change. Carl Jung warns that resisting the expression of an archetype may result in neurosis. So know yourself and allow yourself to grow into the forms of expression that feel right. One of the most common questions for new fighters is, how should I find my fighting style? But once you begin to understand archetypal forces on a deeper level, you'll understand that in reality, your fighting style chooses you. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments which archetypes you relate with, and name some other fighters you think I should have included in this video.